So the first thing I did was lay out the splatter screens and try to figure out about how wide I wanted them apart. Once I figured that out, I took the two that would be in the back and worked on bending the handles. Then I flipped them back over, rethought out where I wanted to put them and how I wanted to distance them from each other, relaid out everything again to make sure that it was right. Two of the handles face down, the third one that will go on top would face upward. So because I had the handles bent, I kind of hung the handles over the edge of the table. Then I used a roll of wire to attach the two screens that would be in the back together by just pushing the wire through the screen on the top, through the bottom one, and twisting them. I did this at the top and the bottom where the two screens met, and I just tried to keep them as even as possible. This entire video, by the way, was done on the deck of our camper, and that's partially why we have the wild fruit picnic tablecloth in the background. So now I'm laying the third one on top, and that handle needs to go up because that will form the pumpkin stem. So I just found about 4 places to attach the wire the same way as I did the bottom two. I went through at least 2 of the screens to make sure that they were attached. So I did this in 2 spots at the top and then again in 2 spots at the bottom. So I've seen multiple pins of this project, and I decided to try it out myself and do my own spin on it. One of the ones that I saw said that they were able to get the splatter screens from the Dollar Tree, but my Dollar Tree was completely sold out of any splatter screens. So I found mine at Walmart. Mine came in a 2-pack, and one was slightly smaller than the other. So I ended up purchasing 3 sets, and that allowed me to do a smaller pumpkin like this one, and then a larger pumpkin using the 3 larger pieces from the 2 packs. They're not all that much different in size, but they are a little bit different. So I decided to try to make the base coat adhere as best possible. I thought about spray painting, but I'm ultimately doing this project from the deck of our camper while we were away for the week, and that's why you see the vinyl tablecloth underneath, the fruity vinyl tablecloth that sits on our picnic table. So I used I used folk art white to do the base, and then I'm also using folk art regular acrylic paint in more of a French linen cream color. I can provide the specific colors at the end of the video, but I covered as best as I could, giving some time in between to dry. I used a hairdryer a little bit, but I tried to make the paint kind of heavier in spots and thinner in spots, and that gives the appearance of the streakiness and more rustic feel. So I'm using a combination of the cream and the white, and I used for the stem folk art, I believe it was called Burnt Umber, but I'll double check that as well. After several coats of that and playing around with the stem with the different colors as well, I let all of that dry. And then I was ready to work on the floral part. So the first thing I did was I took 2 sprigs that I found at Hobby Lobby, which I liked because they already had a pumpkin attached and I didn't have to worry about trying to attach different pieces. I just had these 2 pieces to attach, and then I wanted to decide what to do with the ribbon in the middle. So at first I thought I wanted to do an easy version of a ribbon, which was to cut strips about 8 or 9 inches long in 3 different patterns and layer them. So here you see me kind of going back and forth in my mind about whether I wanted to do like a loopy bow or whether I wanted to do the strips. So here you're going to see me start to cut the strips. I had a checkered pattern for the base, which was the thickest ribbon. Then I had a neutral for the middle ribbon, and then I had one that has polka dots also in neutrals for the top ribbon. So I cut all of the strips so that I had so I had 2 sets of these, 2 sets of 3, and I was using kitchen shears because that's all I had available to me here. But ultimately, I ended up deciding to go with the loopy bow, and I saved these and ended up using them on the second pumpkin in combination with the loopy bow. So you're going to see me kind of thinking this out as I crisscross them. Ultimately, I would pinch them together kind of in the middle and wrap a piece of wire around to hold them together. And then I could kind of form them into arches to give the appearance of just a different kind of bow. So that's me trying to decide if that's the route I wanted to go, and ultimately I decided, no, I think I want to do a loopy bow. So here I created the first loopy bow with the thicker ribbon, and I did 2 loops for each side for this one. I figured I would worry about the ends later once I get them all cut off. I could kind of spruce them up a little bit and make them into little V shapes once I have everything laid out. So I attached that with some ribbon, or I wrapped that bow with some of the floral wire, and then I started to work on the second ribbon, which I only did 1 loop on each side for this one, and I added a little loop in the middle. It's a little bit complicated to explain doing this bow, so I'm just going to kind of let you watch as I go. I have some other videos where I do some bow techniques, but for the most part I wanted to give you an idea just of how this project turned out and how I was able to use all of the other ideas that I'd seen on Pinterest and kind of put my own spin on it myself and give it a shot. So I had that third ribbon, but I decided not to use it for this one. I just decided to put that extra little loop in the center of the top ribbon. Then I kind of relayed out the pieces of the floral parts. And once I had them where I wanted, I used more floral wire to insert around the stem in a couple of different places and through the mesh of the splatter screen. So I did that for both pieces, leaving enough room in the middle for about what I thought I needed for the bow. You may have to play around with this a little bit. Obviously, it depends on the size of your bow. And you could always add some hot glue if you wanted. I think I had to spread my 2 pieces apart a little bit. I think I got them a little bit too close together the first time. But it's easy enough to undo and re-twist twist the wire. All you're doing is pressing the wire through. See there, I'm sliding it apart a little bit. You're just pressing that wire through the mesh and around the pieces of the floral and twisting it on the back. And then I could kind of tell how much space I had for the ribbon in the middle. There's me twisting. I kind of arched the two sprigs a little bit to go with the curve of the pumpkin. And then I took the pre-made bow and I wrapped it around those sprigs. And then I also wrapped it around the handle that represents the stem of the pumpkin. So it served, the floral ribbon of the bow served two purposes: to hold the bow together, and it also attached to the handle. And then I played around with it. I always fool with my bows for quite a long time until I'm happy with them. And then once I had it attached, I went through and I cut little V shapes at the ends of my tails of each of the bow pieces, ribbon pieces. You could do them on an angle, you could do them in a V shape, whatever you like best. You could keep the tails longer so they hang down further, which I tried to do on the second one. But like I said, this is kind of a combination of me finding a bunch of these online and just trying to put my own spin on it myself. It's hard for me to go even a week away without a project, so I wanted something that I could try that would be easy enough for me to get the supplies while we were here at camp, and this turned out to be perfect. I found all of my supplies at between Hobby Lobby and Walmart. So this is me just kind of fooling with the ribbon a little bit more. And then the two bent handles on the bottom that I'm rebending again are what's going to hold the pumpkin up. And there is my first pumpkin in the neutrals. So for the second pumpkin, I did everything the same. These are larger, but this time I tried using, I did like what some people did, which was using the button covers. And I laid them out at first to try to get an idea if I had enough. Again, I got those at Hobby Lobby. I laid them out to try to get a feel for how many I needed, and hot glued all of them on just with a small little dab of glue. And that was plenty. I glued mine right onto the metal, not onto the mesh. And that worked best for me. So I went around and I tried to keep them all even. They were maybe, I would say, about an inch apart, but you could buy more and you could put them closer together. But I wanted to put them on ahead of painting, just so that I could paint them all at the same time, the same as the mesh in the background. You could probably, you know, like I said earlier, you could spray paint your splatter screens first and or add the button covers and spray them too. You probably could even use a primer spray first just to get started. But once I had them all on, I actually didn't think I was going to put any towards the top where they would be covered by the pumpkin and the floral, but I ended up adding them as far up. I had enough, as far up as I wanted. So then, because I didn't have a chalk paint in a color like orange that I thought I was going to do this in, I did have red, which again it was a folk art chalk paint. So I went ahead and painted the whole thing red, even the button covers. It takes quite a bit more time to do the button covers than it did to do the original version, but I did want to give it a shot. I had never used them before, so I wanted to see how it worked. And the glue, just a little dab of hot glue was plenty for each button. So I went through and I tried to paint everything in that red chalk paint, thinking that that would give me a base, kind of as a primer to work with, since that was about all I had access to from here. and then I would be able to go over with regular orange acrylic paint. So again, as you can see, even sped up, this part took a while because I wanted to get in and around all of those buttons. But to spray paint the buttons or to paint them individually would have been even more time consuming. So to me, it would have, just made the most sense to have them attached and just start painting away on the whole thing. So now I'm using an orange, just a regular acrylic orange, and I went over all of the red that I had done. I may have added some cream or some white in before doing this as well, or even some of the burnt umber, but I like the appearance of several different colors and the shading, and just random, heavier here in some spots and lighter here in other spots, just to give it character and more of a rustic feel. So again, I went over the whole thing in red, and I continued to keep fulling with the different colors until I was happy with the blending and the coloring on everything. This part just takes some time, and it's all a matter of preference. So here you see me going back to the 3 patterned pieces of ribbon that I had cut times 2 sets, clipping the ends of each one into a V shape, but pinching them all together and kind of forming an X shape, layering one set of 3 over top of the other in sort of an X shape, and then using the smallest piece of ribbon, I used that pattern to cut another piece to tie them all together. And I left enough in the back that I could tie it to the handle. Ultimately, I didn't feel like this was a big enough bow, so I made another loopy bow using all 3 ribbons, and I placed it on top of this one to give it a little bit more fullness, and ended up using that as my final bow. I forgot to take a video of doing that final bow and attaching them together, but I'm glad that I did use all of it because it did give some more fullness to the final pumpkin.